Hey everybody, we're back here, A2N2 Advertise Here podcast, Sterling Dope with Josh Rose from Deutch LA. Josh has been kind enough to join us down here in Reno and talk a little bit about what's going on at Deutch and what he's doing in LA. So Deutch, some of you don't know, Deutch is a big agency, big time agency. You have offices in LA, New York.
LA, New York.
That's just the only two, okay. So kind of take me behind the scenes a little bit. You're in the interactive division
That's right.
of the agency. So, you know, a little different probably philosophy than what goes on the traditional side. How do you play nicely with the other divisions in the agency with these kind of accounts like PlayStation, for instance? That,
Right.
you know, on paper would seem to be more of an interactive account. You would think that, you know, your group would probably dominate that, but how do you play nicely, you know, kind of behind the scenes with the other groups in the agency?
We have a philosophy we call integrated people, not integrated departments.
Okay.
We were actually one of the first agencies to bring integration in a true fashion into a big agency. Usually what you find when you talk to an agency, you might be in a pitch, you'd find if you're an ad agency, you're going up the elevator to a pitch and you're meeting the digital guys on the way up for the first time.
Right.
Shaking hands with them, you're like, hey, what are you guys going to present? Oh, what are you going to present? And you kind of meet in the room and do it. And that was as close as integration got, you know, not that long ago.
Okay.
Deutsch never worked that way. They always offered full service in-house. And it's not just digital, it's direct marketing, it's design, PR, all of that is handled internally, media,
Okay.
planning. So we've never viewed it as a separate entity. We've never had a separate profit and loss center for digital.
Okay.
And because of that, we don't really have a bias. What happens is when you're an agency that focuses on digital, say, you see the world through the eyes of a digital person, and what you're selling is digital.
Right.
So you tackle any situation, any brand situation from the point of view of your medium bias.
Okay.
And we don't think that's the right way to tackle a brand. It should be handled from a brand first, then you do your media plan and figure out from there.
At what point did you, on the agency side, jump into the kind of digital revolution? What was there, you know, a light that went off in your head at some point, and you just said, "This is the way, and I need to go down this way," because you really kind of had a traditional art background.
Yeah. I always thought I'd be a starving artist.
Okay.
That was my plan from the beginning. And there was something that happened from the very first moment I saw the internet. You know, I think my first experience was on AOL or something, maybe with some MUDs and, you know, working, you know, some fun game stuff in there. But as soon as I understood what was happening with that culture, more of a counterculture than anything else, I knew those were my people. I knew this was a place that I enjoyed being on, people I enjoyed listening to, groups I enjoyed getting together with and having counterculture discussions and counterculture activities.
Okay.
They were under the radar. It was a place where you could vent and do whatever you wanted, and no one was looking. No one knew what we were up to, and you know, you felt like you're in the Wild West again. You know, and that appealed to a lot of the same sensibilities that appealed to me as an artist, as a fine artist.
Right.
As a place to express yourself and in a way that no one can kind of tell you what to do.
And a little, kind of create your own way.
Yeah. And I love that. I lament how much it's a double-edged sword, because what I do is bring marketing to this medium that also has a lot of that edginess to it. But I miss those days of, you know, it being a bit of an exclusive place.
Sure.
You know, and I think those worlds will always exist, and I still participate in that stuff. But that's a little bit of a different hat for me. You know, when I go home and get on the internet, the stuff I do there is much more involved and one-on-one and personal and conversational, whereas the stuff I do from a marketing standpoint tends to be brand level and you know, the equivalent of taking a tour in some ways through a brand. You know, I think it's important to respect what's important about a brand when you go online and not let go of that just because you're in a culture of people who kind of cuss a lot.
Well, and that's kind of an interesting point. I wanted to kind of dovetail a little bit into that. As far as brands are concerned, you know, locally we're still in a small market here, and you know, I think there's lots of businesses in this area that maybe haven't grasped sort of the online revolution yet. You know, there's still some non-believers out there, I guess.
Yeah.
Fact of the matter is, when you touch a brand, generally speaking, sometimes your first interaction is online. So, you know, for those maybe that are non-believers still, I guess, what would you say is the most important part about embracing that online revolution for a brand? And kind of how does that synergistically work with what goes on the traditional side and what maybe they're currently doing?
Yeah. Well, I think in some ways you answered that question when you said it's the first place people go. You have to realize that is the front door for most people, because people are taking things into their own hands now. People are skeptical. They don't necessarily believe marketing messages. So if you are a person, small market or large, and you have a tendency to believe in a way of doing marketing that entails a distance between you and your consumer, your tendency is to not want to get on the internet. It feels scary.
Right.
It feels like you're a little too close to the person who's buying from you. And not everyone loves that.
Yeah.
Some people like to keep that as an arm's distance.
Sure.
And that has worked in marketing to some extent, because you can keep a little bit of man behind the curtain on some of that. That man behind the curtain doesn't really exist anymore.
Right.
You can find out anything you want through a myriad of sources. And so the hardest thing to do is to say, okay, I'm going to lean into that. It's a scary notion. So
right.
I think a lot of times you have to wait till people aren't scared anymore.
Yeah.
And once they're not, they switch like that.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier at lunch, where it was like, you know, you have some clients who, like, you've been kind of pitching online, on and on and on, and then, you know, they call you one day and they're like, hey, how come we're not doing this? And you're like, hey, I've been talking about it for a while.
Yeah, I've seen it happen within a week. Where, yeah, exactly.
So as an agency, you really kind of need to be prepared and have a game plan for probably every client in the event that they do call up on you know, that Thursday morning or whatever, and it's time to fire the gun.
Yeah. Well, it used to be it was guys like us who were going trying to pitch to them and trying to convince them.
Right.
They weren't convincible in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. They might try a few things, but they weren't going to jump on board and be believers right off the bat. What I found was the thing that converts people the most is their friends and family, or their competition. Right. As soon as a guy who owns a fast food restaurant or fast dining casual restaurant sees his buddy or his guy who's got his job over at another restaurant on some panel or some board bragging about some website he's got or some great viral campaign he launched, that's the day he comes over to you, if he's your client, and says, I want to get my subservient chicken up there. I want to get my thing up there. Why the hell aren't you guys bringing me ideas like that? Yeah. And that happens really fast. Yeah.
And that kind of opens up the brand management online argument a little bit. I think if you were a little bit behind the eight ball, you would find that somebody's already representing your brand online without your knowledge. I think, you know, it's happened recently with it was one of the major airlines where somebody was fielding questions and, you know, and doing all kinds of stuff, and the airline had no knowledge of it. So, you know, in a certain respect, I would say that if you're a big brand, wouldn't you kind of have to explore those things out of a necessity, just to make sure that you're not being represented by each new technology that comes out because it's moving so fast and there are people moving so fast with it? Yeah, you have to walk that line. You have to be aware of those things that are out there, because you can actually learn a lot from that. There are companies coming out that literally are becoming their own source for other companies to complain and offer suggestions, and they really don't have much to do with the brands themselves, although they welcome the brands to come in and be a voice in there. They don't need them in there to spout off about the things they like about American Airlines. At the same time, you know, TGI Fridays is a client of ours. There's an application to put pieces of flair on people's web pages. TGI Fridays don't do that. But good for them to know that's going on, because it's a way of understanding people out there and how they're embracing your brand and how they're using your brand. And that stuff's invaluable. You've got to be aware of that stuff. So I want to thank Josh Rose for coming out from LA. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
You know, hope to have you again up here. Sorry we couldn't go skiing, but we took some photographs up in Tahoe, and once you get those in the post, throw me a couple and we'll put them on the blog.
Yeah, I'd love to throw them up, see what we did.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Thanks Josh, appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Sorry we didn't have time tonight to get Ed Atkins on, but we'll, as always, we'll carry on. Thanks again to 12 Horses for lending us the camera, and we'll see you next time.
Feel it closing in, feel it closing in, the fear of blue night cold, hearing song cold, feel it closing in.